Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle, and thank you for joining me here. So today, we have a different type of video. I'm not responding to any particular article, but information must be disseminated regardless. So we're going to go over the myth, though, that it was just feminism that ruined women and relationships. As you can tell on screen, feminism is cancer, and also trash. But I argue a different perspective. Before I go in, though, I want you to use this perspective. The perspective that men and women are different. They are not equal, but men and women are just different groups. Regardless, let us begin. In today's world, boys, and of course girls, are taught early on that females are great. They are the sugar and spice of life. Everyone is taught that gender or sex equality is real, and that women are just as capable at pulling their weight in a relationship like a man. However, it was the evil ideology called feminism that corrupted our females to be less than pleasant to be around. From there, we would judge that if we could get rid of feminism and its evil parts, then we could make women, relationships, and marriage great again and restore the direction of our society and civilization. Of course, as we can see in our modern day, some parts of feminism have actually begun to negatively impact women. For example, now we allow transgender people to perform in women's sports, or enforce that women work just as long and hard as men in the workforce. Women don't like that. And some women are now finally waking up to the negative aspects of feminism and call themselves feminists. Now from here, you can tell that this guy on the right, it's a little guy, but it's 6'3", 250 pounds, transsexual Hannah Mounsey is helping Australia crush the competition at the Asian Women's World. I love feminism. Anyways, continuing this logic, these women who reject a part of feminism and want to bring back so-called traditional values. By traditional values, they just mean the women, the females, they just mean that they want the benefits of the older days without any of the responsibility. Of course, to some males of our current society, they believe that now, in our modern age, you only have to find the quote-unquote right woman, obviously not this guy, but the right woman, so that you too can have a great marriage in life. If you unfortunately had a divorce, or were falsely accused of sexual assault or rape, then society blames you, the man, for choosing the wrong woman. It is the man's fault for choosing to be with a feminist. You should have chosen one of those good girls instead. And that there is the myth, that it was just excessive feminism that has corrupted women and society. Now, we all know feminism is trash. I mean, it's also cancer. But you gotta understand, it is a luxury product of living in good times. People see that oftentimes men and women go to universities and come out as pretty much communists. Therefore, it must be the brainwashing and ideological manipulation that people suffer that make them into feminists and communists. You also hear, though, and see stories of foreign-born women that come to Western countries like the US or Australia and quickly throw away their old traditional values from their old countries. They, though, soon become feminists themselves. This type of thinking isn't completely incorrect, but I would add that there's another element to this that most people in the world are missing. And this is where we must look at the two sexes individually, for those are the two that we are talking about. But for this video's purposes, I will not be talking about the male sex, but it is the female sex that really is the oddball. We have very well-documented ideas and facts about the male sex, but the female sex hasn't really been discussed all that much. Regardless, but much to the dismay of equalists or people who believe in equality for all, men and women are born with different hormones, Estrogen is the female hormone, and testosterone is the male hormone. These chemicals, we don't realize, but these chemicals drastically alter the body's composition and tendencies when compared to each other. Estrogen makes women feel differently than men, and testosterone makes men think. Now, there are elements of estrogen in men, but at a much lower degree than testosterone, and in women there is some testosterone produced within the female, but much less than compared to estrogen. Now, obviously, if you have enough estrogen in a man, then you won't suffer some serious side effects, such as an increased higher risk of stroke, heart disease, enlarged prostate, and prostate cancer. If you have enough estrogen in a male body, you will have bigger boobs, a loss of muscle tone, and low libido, and increased risk of ED and other things, increased fat tissue. But because of estrogen, women, much like men, have a tremendous effect on the mind. Well, 2. Women and estrogen-filled males who look for relationships. Hypergamy is absolutely mandated. Hypergamy is a term used in social science for the act or practice of a person marrying a spouse of a higher caste or social status than themselves. Better put, hypergamy is the need for a person to marry someone who is of a higher class, higher status, or who has greater wealth. This hypergamy drives women to seek out the absolute best possible mate and obtain better provision and protection from that mate. If the mate cannot meet her desires and demands, then hypergamy will kick in again, and she will try and attempt to monkey branch to someone else who can provide her newly founded needs. Also, to add to the estrogen-filled nature, relieving yourself, of course, of responsibility is needed. Now stay with me here. Responsibility is about trying to get good outcomes. It doesn't matter about the amount of effort you put in or whether or not it was your fault if it doesn't go well. If you are responsible, you will take whatever consequence comes and make it happen. Whatever the it is, though, at the moment. In the animal kingdom, women cannot afford to suffer the consequences of their mistakes and bad choices. This could potentially lead to danger or even death, and they have to avoid that at all costs. Women cannot take on the responsibilities for the bad choices of others. That's only logical, right? If women cannot be responsible for their own bad choices, then how can they be responsible for other people's bad choices or responsibilities? Therefore, it is absolutely necessary for a female to pass on her responsibility to the nearest man and convince him to take on that responsibility no matter what the cost. This could include, from the female, she could cry, shriek, shame, scream, etc. At the end of the day, responsibility is a masculine trait, and shirking responsibility is a feminine trait. In the ancient days, when I'm talking about ancient days, I'm talking about like the Roman days or even before then, before the Roman days, before the ancient Egyptians, before the ancient Babylonians. Life was very short and extremely dangerous. You never knew where there might be danger. Under these conditions, men needed their superior strength, agility, emotional fortitude, and intellect to survive. For women, this meant that she had to attach herself to the man who can take full responsibility for protection and provision, which had to be absolutely necessary for her survival. She would have to submit to his authority because he became responsible for her. Why would a man be responsible for a woman if he had no authority? However, with the explosion of industry and technology, especially in the early 18th century and late 17th century, the world, or at least the Western world, has become relatively safer and more secure with an abundance of resources. And this, unfortunately, has led to the decline of the traditional masculine role. With fewer responsibilities, there was less perceived need for women to submit to men and their authority. And this is when we saw the early and beginning days of feminism. This was the beginning of the idea that women could throw off the chains of male authority because women could be fully responsible for themselves despite men still providing everything for society. The problem with this, though, is that the biology of men and women have stayed constant despite our environment changing. Sure, women will always have this urging to be protected and provided for by a man. It's just in their nature. If a woman can provide for herself, she will absolutely still need a guy to provide for her with the female love languages of gift giving and acts of service. In our modern environment, she might be able to survive without a man, but she cannot be happy in this regard. Her nature and biological imperative is absolutely, at the end of the day, to be protected and provided for by a man. And the protection and provision terms adapt to whatever environment that a woman might find herself in. For example, the protections and provision terms might change if you were in the Industrial Revolution compared to being in 2019, which would also change according if you were living in the year 800 or the year 400. But it still remains the same. A woman will always want to be protected and provided for, regardless of time or environment. But to assess female nature with modern society, submitting to male authority might make little sense in our day and age. Therefore, women, as we have seen, will demand equal authority to men while expecting the 1950s traditional chivalrous manners. Equal authority and receiving chivalry are, of course, contradictory. This creates a society full of double standards, and, unfortunately, consistency is a tool of the patriarchy and can be a real pain for people who want things and do not give things. But to get back to feminism. Feminism is the logical desire to get rid of male authority as well as provide the female the need for male protection and provision. Feminism, at this stage, is female nature that is legally binding and culturally crushing. It is the desire of all women alive. Take, for example, the idea or the picture of a modern feminist. She has blue or purple hair, doesn't shave her armpits, she is extremely rude, and screams about patriarchy all the time. Compare this with a traditional girl who is looking for a good man to marry, who is much nicer and polite. Think about it like this. Those two, the feminist and the traditional girl, what are their end goals? Their end goals are exactly the same. They both want to be protected and provided for, regardless of who actually does it, whether it be a man or the government. They both want, of course, in the end, a man to take responsibility for themselves without authority. They both want a man. The only difference is in their approach to their end goals. This in turn leads us to the myth breaker. The idea of a female being an anti-feminist is absolutely illogical and is incorrect. Feminism is female nature. It is estrogen-filled female nature. For example, ask a woman if she is an anti-feminist. If she is, ask her to name a benefit that was gained through feminist waves that she would be willing to take on the commensurate responsibility. Will she sign up for the draft in exchange for the ability to vote? I think not. Look, every woman is a feminist or a feminist to be. Feminism is female nature manifested. Every woman wants a man to take responsibility for them, and they only differ in their approach. But they also want the autonomy and authority that is part of the modern woman. She wants all of the benefits without any responsibility of either. Feminism didn't ruin women. It was just unrestrained female nature that we now see. Take, for example, your grandmother. If she was born in our modern age, let's say the 1990s or the 1980s, Would she act differently than before? Would she not act like a modern female instead of an early to mid 20th century woman? If your grandmother was young in 2019, she would be a feminist, whether she claims to be or not. The only reason she submitted to your grandfather was because it was demanded. Without submitting to your grandfather, then your grandmother might not have survived. Hypergamy. This instinct, it has no limits, literally, and it always has a desire for more. Hypergamy is constant in that it always wants more. Every woman is a feminist because it is biologically wired in them. Whether we like it or not, that's just reality. And if we go from there, if feminism is female nature, and feminism is cancer and trash, then it just can't be third or fourth wave feminism that is bad. No. It means that all of the previous waves of feminism is also garbage. If women want and need men for protection and provision and responsibility, then men should have the commensurate authority over women because the men are ultimately responsible for them. What man would want responsibility without authority? If men cannot have authority over women, then we should not be responsible for them. Responsibility without authority is slavery, and authority without responsibility is tyranny. And in today's world, many men are slaves to the system without even knowing it. Unfortunately, if men, though, are not responsible for women, then women would die because they cannot truly survive on their own. And we would not be able to continue our civilization because women are needed to give birth to the next generation. And we would ultimately have our culture destroyed by not being able to reproduce. Men are ultimately responsible for women, no matter what anyone says. Men must have authority over women. Because if men do not, like I said, then society breaks down and will eventually be conquered by other groups of men. Such is the animal kingdom. Like it or not, it's just nature, and we have to accept reality for what it is. But with that in mind, thank you very much for watching this long video. I'm Brazen Eagle. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.